Thank you very much. Since we heard about Croatia, an example from the State Secretary Vidiš, I pretty much took a bit wider perspective. And I apologize in advance that it's not wide to cover the whole globe, but Europe. So for those of you not interested in European, more or less context, maybe you won't get much out of these 10 minutes. But for others, I hope you'll get some. So basically, I think we now have really a clear case for use of micro-credentials. And I'll start with a very old sentence, which was actually used when then President Kennedy wanted to change the United States educational system. It was in 1961. When he said that the progress of US as a nation can be no swifter than their progress in education. So pretty much we are linked, and with micro-credentials we are more or less focused on continual education rather than initial one, although it could play another role, or it could end up being a stackable elements of initial education in the future, but right now it's more considered to kind of fill the gaps with existing workforce through adult and other types of learning. So today, more or less the three elements of environment I like to share with you. Being myself a person coming from a digital and technical kind of background, I'll mostly talk now about technology as an element of change, and one that maybe pushes micro-credentials even further away than we might think. And then regarding the policy, we learned a lot in the past presentation about European policy, so I'll just do one slide or less. So the thing starts with Industrial Revolution. You know the Luddites in the 19th century, when people were afraid that pretty much they will lose their jobs. But what happened was actually the opposite thing, that actually almost no jobs were lost, and for every job lost there was a new one created. And as a result, the standard of living has risen. So basically, the last industrial revolution helped mankind live better, and people didn't end up unemployed. What will happen in digital revolution we are living now? That's another question, one I'll try to more or less answer in the next slides. So basically, currently, we really live in kind of a double revolution, one of information technology and another one which is emerging of biotechnology. And when these two are combined, using big data and analysis, which is now available, we'll see a tremendous change in the way we live and in technologies around us, from medicine all the way to better understanding people and using it as a maybe marketing tool to sell you the new product, a new politician, or even a new ideology. So technology certainly has one great advantage over people. It has a lot of disadvantages, but there is one notable advantage, and this is it could easily connect and update. So for instance, if you have a person, a human doctor, then when something new is invented in medicine, your doctor in Croatia, or I don't know, in the Netherlands, will need some time to learn about it through the conferences, through the published scientific papers, and then use the new knowledge to treat you. If you have a robot doctor, let's say, as soon as some new knowledge is available, all the robot doctors around the world, from, I don't know, Africa all the way to the most richest countries, will get updated. So in this sense, technology poses some kind of threat to humans and to some of the things we kind of take as granted or for granted. So what could happen in revolution which we are living now, which is a digital one, is that maybe it's possible to have a class of unemployable people, those who pretty much are missing skills that are needed to be valuable parts of the societies. And even worse scenario could be one in which we have the both things, the high unemployment and at the same time the lack of necessary skills and knowledge in the workforce. And it could happen very soon, depending on how fast we kind of keep pace with the change in technology and with education, retraining people to avoid this kind of scenario, which is a pretty bad one. So basically, as Europeans, what we need to understand, I think, and this is part of Draghi's agenda, which I'll refer to a bit later, is that innovation and knowledge don't have just the traditional homes. So this slide shows you the peaks. Each peak means the number of innovation of patents in a small administrative area, like in a town or something like this. And you'll see the big spikes in, I don't know, Berkeley and Stanford, in MIT, Harvard, also in Japanese universities, some also in Europe. 10 years later, it changed more or less completely, because it seems that the big spikes are now in parts of the world, like China, where we never expected them to be. European spikes, on the contrary, were not much bigger than 10 years before this. So similar goes in other part of technology, and its overall trends in patents for the past almost 250 years or so, with Europe being blue, showing pretty kind of stagnant growth compared to some other competitors in the world. So why I'm putting the patents on the chart? Why is this important? Well, it's quite important. Stay with me for another 2 slides. What we can expect is that if in the most kind of now advanced part of digital technology, which shapes more or less and will shape our future, and this is AI, most of the companies applying for the patents are not European. There are 2 European companies, Siemens from Germany and Dutch Philips. All the others, you see where they come from. And now the big problem with having this kind of a landscape for the most advanced technology in digital, at least we are using these days and rely much on it, is basically that technology increases concentration of wealth. Because marginal cost of adding additional user to the digital product is 0. For Netflix to add me as a new user, it's 0. If they add 1,000 users, okay, maybe they need a bit of a disk and maybe 1 processor more, but that's it. So actually, if you possess IP and patent rights, most of the economical results, if you want most of the money, goes there. So if it's American or Chinese or other companies, then we Europeans will be more or less users of the technology, not the creators of value. This is problematic because what happened already in 2016, when the pace of digital revolution was not so fast as it is now, is that 8 people in the world possess the same value as poorer half of the humanity. Bill Gates, for instance, owned at the time a fortune that is 1.5 million times bigger than the income of average American household. Meaning that with the concentration of wealth, some of us may not live so good lives as we used to live in the past, because most of the value will be concentrated in very few. What could happen, you see in Russia, where they pretty much play in a way that they find someone to support the oligarchs. So more or less, these developments, which are more or less supported by digital technology, which per se is a good thing, but if you play it well. So people these days, as a result of technology, sometimes don't even realize their ignorance, and that the technology very often, in order to be attractive for the users and to provide income for the owners of technology, will play it in a way that surround you with like-minded people. So if you think the world is flat, there are maybe 0.5% of the population thinking the same. But if technology recognizes you as a flat land kind of follower, you'll get all the posts from all the people thinking the same. And your perception will be, well, there are so many of us thinking that the world is flat. How come that all the others don't understand us? So basically, if you didn't see the movie Social Dilemma, you should do it in order to understand pretty much how technology these days, digital technology these days works, why is it so, and how big threat it is to political systems and to common establishments we trust in. So basically, this advancement pretty much also influences political movements, because when we had industrial revolution, this was so big of a change in the late 18th and mid 19th century that new systems were created, those that pretty much succeeded monarchies which failed to survive this big change in technology, and we got liberal democracy, we got communist dictatorships and fascism as a free then major political systems. And then it took humanity almost 100 years of terrible wars to pretty much have the prevailing one, which is now capitalism and liberal democracy, which more or less is common in most parts of the world these days. Actually, now we again see that we live in times of nationalism and populism, of nostalgia for some better times in the past and so on. And if you ask yourself, why is this happening? There is a reason for this. There is a number of reasons, but one of the reasons could be linked to technology, because populism, which could be more or less rationalized as us common people against the elites, pretty much is largely response to the personal insecurity. People pretty much economically not feeling safe, whether they will be able to sustain their living standard in the future, whether some either migrants or technology will squeeze them out of their jobs. And this concern for the future, which is also driven by tremendous technological change, is pretty much something that makes people more or less attracted to this kind of political systems and ideologies. And now, if we want to look a bit broader to the context and the case for micro-credentials, which I'll sum up in the next two slides, then there are two important kind of slides, or if you want, data from the Draghi's report. One is population trends in Europe and competing economies. Europe is blue, and you see that Europe is both in the population figures and in the people who are ready to work are following the negative trends. Croatia maybe has the very negative trends, some other countries not so, but overall Europe is in the next like 75 years is expected to drop for 35% in the workforce, 45% in the overall number of inhabitants. Already today, in a number of industries, we feel the shortage of workers, and this slide from Draghi's report show more or less percentage of unfilled vacancies, those that are there and could not be filled. It's roughly at the end of 22, it was 4.5% for some of these industries, and as a result, almost or more than a half of companies, large and small, in the European Union actually feel the shortage of skills, and they find it as a big problem for their further development. And to sum up pretty much why I think we need education of existing workforce and hence the micro-credentials is to fight potential unemployment originating from missing skills, to provide knowledge and skills within the workforce needed for the economy, not to have 54% of the economy claiming that they don't have workers, to actually compensate for the negative demography, because if we are already aware that we are going to have less workers, it means more or less that to sustain the quality of living which we are living now, we'll need to produce products or services of a higher value, higher added value, in order to compensate for the less workers we'll have to produce it. So we need more skills and more complex skills to do it. We need to provide knowledge to our societies, to our workers, to start creating IP which will then be linked with the biggest economical benefits compared to being just the user, and finally to decrease personal insecurity and hence to have better political setups, because if we already try to persuade people in a workforce that they shouldn't be afraid of losing jobs or being put to the margin, then it means that they will be less attracted to those populist and other movements which we see what they could produce in the world today. And in policy sense, more or less, Draghi recognized 3 areas, one of which is innovation and productivity, the other 2 is decarbonisation and security, and dependencies of Europe to fossil fuels from other countries and stuff like this. So here we could find place for innovation and productivity. And actually, if you sum up the whole report in a way to put it in just 3 sentences, then you'll see that Europe will need a fundamentally new approach to skills, and we need to ensure workers to have right to education and to allow them to accept new technologies. And then the recent answer, which was already explained by European Commission, thank you very much. I'll just put one slide, and this is my last slide. It's a union skills strategy, or now communication, with 4 pillars, with use of micro-credentials being very kind of vividly put as one of the places where Europe will invest. And the good thing is that it will be followed, at least in the communication, it's listed by the European semester, meaning that the national countries, although it's a communication and it's not the so strict element which countries must implement, but if it's linked with the European semester, it means that it will be conditioned to get money. So for all of us implementing micro-credentials and programs, we could expect kind of pink or more or less future ahead for the micro-credentials. Thank you very much.